You know all about the Mad King, the fall of House Targaryen, and the brutal war for the Iron Throne. But what if I told you the real story, the seeds of that downfall, and even the origin of Jon Snow was all set in motion a century earlier by a humble hedge knight and a little boy hiding a world-changing secret? This isn't just another prequel, it's the history that redefines everything. In this video, we're breaking down every single connection between A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and Game of Thrones, from the obvious to the incredibly obscure. Welcome back to Westeros. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms winds the clock back about 90 years before the events of Game of Thrones. The dragons have vanished, but the Targaryen dynasty still rules. This is a much smaller, more personal story about two unlikely heroes, a naive but courageous hedge knight named Sir Duncan the Tall and his sharp-witted young squire, Egg. But don't let the lighter tone fool you. Their journey across a recovering Westeros is packed with people, events, and prophecies that directly shape the future we all know. Think of this show as the quiet chapter that connects the peak Targaryen power we saw in House of the Dragon to their near extinction in Game of Thrones. So let's get into the biggest connections bridging these epic sagas. The single most important connection, the one this whole series hinges on, is the true identity of Dunk's squire, Egg. He's not just some clever, bald-headed kid from King's Landing. He is Prince Aegon Targaryen, fifth in line to the throne, and so far down the list that his chances of ruling are practically zero. He'll one day be known as Aegon the Unlikely for a reason. Of course, unlikely things have a way of happening in Westeros. Egg will become King Aegon V Targaryen, and this is where the family tree becomes absolutely essential for any Game of Thrones fan. King Aegon V had a son, Jaehaerys II. Jaehaerys II then had two children who would bring their house to their knees, Aerys II Targaryen and his sister wife, Rhaella. If those names are setting off alarms, they should. Aerys II is the Mad King. This makes that young, insolent boy squiring for a hedge knight the great-grandfather of Daenerys and Rhaegar Targaryen. And since Rhaegar is Jon Snow's biological father, that means Egg is Jon Snow's great-great-grandfather. Every lesson Dunk teaches Egg is shaping the man whose descendants will either save the realm or burn it to the ground. And the family ties don't stop there. One of Egg's older brothers is a quiet, studious boy named Aemon. He'll eventually be sent to the Citadel to become a maester before taking the Black. Yes, he is the very same Maester Aemon of the Night's Watch who mentors Sam and Jon a century later. When a dying Maester Aemon whispers, "Egg, I dreamed I was old," he's calling out for the little brother we're just getting to know right now. It wouldn't be a Targaryen story without a few grim prophecies, and this show delivers one of the most chilling in the entire franchise. A fortune teller gives Egg a horrifying prediction about his death, tying directly to one of the most mysterious events in Targaryen history, the tragedy at Summerhall. Decades from now, King Aegon V, our Egg, will become obsessed with bringing dragons back to Westeros. He believed only dragons could force the lords to accept his reforms, protecting the common folk he grew to love while traveling with Dunk. In 259 AC, he gathered his family at the Summerhall Castle to celebrate the birth of his first great-grandchild. There, he attempted a ritual with wildfire and ancient lore to hatch 7 dragon eggs. It went catastrophically wrong. A massive, uncontrollable fire erupted, consuming the castle. King Aegon V, his eldest son, and his loyal friend and Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Duncan the Tall, all died in the blaze. But here's the most critical link to Game of Thrones. The baby born on that day of fire and tragedy was Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. Being born amidst smoke and salt led Rhaegar to believe he was the prince that was promised. That belief drove his every action, including his relationship with Lyanna Stark, which ultimately sparked Robert's rebellion and led to the birth of Jon Snow. Egg's death is forever tied to Jon Snow's birth. We also see another Targaryen with the gift of prophecy, Egg's older brother, Daeron the Drunken, who is tormented by dreams, including one of a dead dragon, a dark omen for his family's fate. While Dunk and Egg's story is set in a time of relative peace, the realm is haunted by the memory of a brutal civil war that ended just a decade earlier, the First Blackfire Rebellion. This conflict is the show's political backbone. The rebellion kicked off when King Aegon IV the Unworthy legitimized all his bastards on his deathbed. One of them, a legendary warrior named Daemon Blackfire, was given the Valyrian steel sword of kings, Blackfire. He used it to challenge the Trueborn king, splitting the Seven Kingdoms in two. Though the Targaryens won, the Blackfire cause never really died, leading to a century of paranoia and questions of legitimacy that hang over every political move in this show. This brings us to one of the most fascinating figures in all of Westeros, a man whose influence touches all three shows, Brynden Rivers, better known as Bloodraven. At this time, Bloodraven is the Hand of the King, a ruthless spy master and sorcerer who effectively runs the kingdom with a network of spies that coined the saying, "1,000 eyes and one." Now get ready for this. This is the exact same person who is eventually sent to the Night's Watch, vanishes beyond the wall, and merges with a weirwood tree to become the Three-Eyed Raven. That's right, the ancient being who trains Bran Stark was once the most feared political operator in King's Landing. We even see a glimpse of him in one of Daemon's visions in House of the Dragon, linking the eras thematically. His actions in this period are what set him on the path to becoming a mystical guide for the future of the entire realm. Beyond direct plot connections, the show is filled with character parallels that deepen our understanding of Game of Thrones. The clearest example is the parallel between Sir Duncan the Tall and Brienne of Tarth. George R. R. Martin himself confirmed that Brienne is a descendant of Dunk, and it's easy to see why. Both are unusually tall warriors mocked for not fitting the typical knightly image. Both have an unshakable moral compass and a deep commitment to protecting the innocent. Dunk's loyalty to Egg is a direct mirror of Brienne's fierce dedication to the Stark children. Dunk is the spiritual predecessor to Brienne, the true knight in a world that's forgotten what that means. His struggle to prove he's a real knight is a question that characters like Jaime, the Hound, and Barristan Selmy all grapple with in Game of Thrones. By focusing on a hedge knight and the small folk, the show also gives us a ground-level view of Westeros, often missing from the high court politics. It's the world seen through the eyes of the common person, much like Arya's journey through the Riverlands, reminding us of the human cost of the Game of Thrones. A trip through Westeros means running into the great houses, and this show gives us a great look at the ancestors of families we know so well. At the Ashford tourney, Dunk befriends the charismatic Sir Lionel Baratheon, known as the Laughing Storm. He's the powerful Lord of Storm's End and the ancestor of Robert, Stannis, and Renly. Seeing him as a cheerful ally is a wild contrast to the bitter hatred his descendant, Robert, would have for Egg's descendants. We also meet other familiar names, like a Sir Manfred Dondarrion, an ancestor of the Lightning Lord, Beric, and Lord Medgar Tully, an ancestor of Catelyn Stark and Lysa Arryn. But maybe the most exciting piece of lore brought to life is the Trial of Seven. We've seen a trial by combat before. Think Bronn versus the Knight of the Vale, or Oberyn versus the Mountain. But here, Prince Aerion Targaryen invokes an ancient tradition where guilt is decided by a battle between two teams of 7 knights. It's a brutal spectacle rooted in the faith of the Seven, and it's something book readers have been dying to see on screen. The climax, where Dunk has to find 6 allies to fight with him against a prince, is a legendary moment finally realized. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms isn't just filling a gap in the timeline, it's telling the foundational story for the entire Targaryen saga we know. The direct bloodline from Egg to Dany and Jon, the prophecies of Summerhall that sealed Rhaegar's destiny, and the presence of the man who would become the three-eyed raven, these aren't just Easter eggs, they are the pillars connecting these worlds. It's the origin story of a dynasty's fall, told through the eyes of two of its most lovable characters. What connections did you spot? Did I miss any subtle details or pieces of lore? Let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. And if you love breaking down the history of Westeros, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. Thanks for watching.